You pick up a seasonal blend. You look for the origin. Usually, you see the same kind of origins rotate over time. Ethiopia, Brazil, Indonesia. But there's one that's almost always there. All seasons, all year round. Yeah, Colombia. But why? Welcome to Anatomy of Flavour, brought to you by Specialty Roasters, where we connect the craft of coffee with the cup in your hands. I'm Jared King, your navigator on this journey of taste, for those with good taste. Let's start with a map. If you watched our last episode, you already know the rules. Equator for stability, altitude for temperature, that's the cage that coffee lives in. But now, look at Colombia. Right at the tip of South America, running almost the entire length of the country, there are 3 mountain ranges. The Western, Central, and Eastern Cordillera. 3 separate ridges of the Andes, cutting all the way down from north to south, like the spine of a giant. And coffee? Coffee follows those ridges almost the entire way, but here's what makes Colombia different from almost every other origin on the coffee belt. Colombia sits on both sides of the equator, north and south, at the same time. And in the coffee world, that is extraordinarily rare. You already know why that matters. The equator gives you stability, no killing frosts, no brutal summers, just that permanent autumn that coffee is always chasing. But when you have producing regions on both sides of that line, the north and the south aren't just growing coffee at the same time, they're growing it on different schedules, different altitudes, different microclimates, different harvest windows. That's the setup. And it's the reason Colombia can do something that Brazil can't, that Ethiopia can't, that almost no other origin on earth can pull off. But to understand why, we need to talk about the rain. So, rain. What does rain have to do with harvest? To understand that, we need to go back to basics. To have fruit, you first need flowers. And for a coffee tree to flower, it needs a trigger. That trigger is rain. But not just any rain. It has to be the first rain after a dry season. The moment that rain arrives, after weeks, sometimes months of drought, coffee trees respond within 48 to 72 hours. Every tree, all at once. A synchronized mass flowering that turns entire hillsides white overnight. This is called stress blooming. Dry season builds up pressure, and rain releases it. The trees explode into flower. Those flowers only last 3 to 5 days. White, delicate, and they smell like jasmine. Then, they're gone, leaving behind the beginning of a fruit. Now here's the thing about that fruit. From the moment those flowers drop, it takes 9 months to ripen. 9 months. That was human pregnancy. Just to get one harvest. In most origins, this happens once. One dry season, one rainy season. One flowering, one harvest. One shot per year. That's Ethiopia. That's Brazil. That's not Colombia. So the Andes create something unusual. 2 dry seasons and 2 rainy seasons every year. In regions where both cycles are distinct, coffee trees go through this process twice. 2 periods of stress, 2 releases, 2 flowering, which naturally means 2 harvests. But wait, if fruit takes 9 months to ripen and there are only 12 months in a year, how does that actually work? Is it some advanced technology hacking the ripening cycle? A special variety that matures faster? Yeah, nah. The fruit still takes 9 months. That biological clock doesn't change. What changes is when the clock starts. First rains arrive, there's a stress blooming, a flowering. The clock starts. 9 months later, rain harvest. The cosecha principle. Then, about 5 to 6 months after that first rain, the second dry wet cycle kicks in. Same trees, same plants, flower again. Clock starts again. 9 months after that, second harvest, the Mitaca. It's not that the fruit grows faster, it's that the land gives the same tree 2 chances to start the clock within a single year. Now, running 2 harvests takes a toll. a tree producing 2 rounds of fruit is burning through nutrients at twice the rate. That's why Colombian farmers need much more intensive soil management than producers in single harvest origins. It's a demanding system, but the land makes it possible. And the Mitaca? Don't mistake smaller for lesser. In regions like Julia, the secondary harvest produces some of the most sought-after microlots in the specialty world. Less volume, more attention per tree. Buyers who know their stuff specifically hunt for these batches. But 2 harvests alone don't explain why Colombia is available 12 months a year. That's where the geography comes back in. Remember those 3 cordilleras running north to south? The south, Nariño-Oaxaca, the main harvest runs April to June. In the center, Julia, the coffee triangle, October through February. In the north, Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, peaks through December all the way into March. They're not competing, they're taking turns. North, center, south, rotating across the calendar like clockwork. That's the answer. That's why Colombia is always in your cup. No trick, no favoritism, just geography and climate running on a schedule that almost no other origin on Earth can match. Coffee didn't start here. It arrived here in the hands of Jesuit missionaries, sometime around 1730. They crossed from Guyana to Venezuela into northeastern lowlands of Colombia. The Jesuits, if you don't know, were the cultural freight carriers of the colonial era. Wherever they went, they brought faith, farming, and seeds. Always seeds. But here's where the story gets interesting. Coffee didn't spread across Colombia through government policy. It didn't come from commercial ambition or colonial machinery. It spread through the confession booth. In a small town called Salazar de las Palmas, a Catholic priest named Francisco Romero came up with a rather creative approach to penance. You sin, you plant a coffee tree. That was your penance. Your path back to grace through coffee. Now, let me pause here for a second, because centuries before this, on the other side of the world, there was a monk who thought that coffee was the devil's drink, and he tried to burn every last bean of it. And somehow, across an ocean and several centuries later, that same plant became an act of religious devotion. That story is one of the most remarkable origin legends in the entire coffee world. But we'll get there when we get to Ethiopia. Make sure you subscribe for that. But right now, let's go back to Colombia. As priests across the country picked up the same idea, as faith moved from town to town, from the eastern lowlands into the central highlands, from the northern valleys down through the southern Andes, so did the coffee. Province by province, confession by confession. By the mid-1800s, coffee had followed the cross almost across the entire country. Colombia declared independence in 1819. The Spanish were gone, the colonial era was over, and just 16 years later, the first commercial shipment of Colombian coffee left the northern port of Cucuta, bound for the world. But the seeds they carried into these mountains, those stayed. And quietly, without fanfare, coffee became the economic backbone of a newly free nation. One priest's act of devotion to 50,000 farming families spread across those 3 mountain ranges. Planted under colonialism, harvested in freedom. The seed didn't just grow, it quietly took over an entire country. The idea of knowing exactly where your coffee comes from, that's what brought us to Drop 002. Mule coffee roasters. Nicholas and Cesar, 2 Colombians in Australia who got on a plane, walked onto the farms, and found the farmers worth believing in. One of them is a farmer also named Cesar Huesaquillo, based in Buenavista, Quindío, deep in the Colombian Andes. The first time Mule's founders Nicholas and Cesar sat down to cup Huesaquillo's coffee, the reaction was immediate. La bomba. It just came out, because that's what it was. In Colombia, la bomba means a few things. It's the pump, the way a healthy tree draws everything the volcanic soil has to offer straight into the fruit. It's the title given to the fastest, most precise coffee picker on the farm. And it's that moment when a flavor hits your palate and there are no words left. Just that. Drop 002 features 3 coffees from Cesar Buesoquillo's farm. Not just single origin, single farm, single farmer, single roaster, from the exact same land. The exact same hands, 3 completely different varietals. But why these 3 varietals? That's the next episode of Anatomy of Flavour, when we go deep into the evolution of Colombia's coffee varietals. Trust me, that story is worth waiting for. And the full story of Mule coffee roasters, Nicholas and Cesar, and how they found Cesar Buesoquillo on the hillside in Quindío, that's coming up on our brand story series. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one either. Drop 002 is available now, and the link is in the description. Before we wrap up, here's a little something for your next cafe run. Next time you see a seasonal blend on the shelf, before you even flip the bag over, take a guess what's in it. I'll give you one. Colombia. You won't win every time, but your odds are pretty good. 2 rainy seasons, 3 mountain ranges, a priest, a confession booth, 1 seed that quietly took over an entire country. That's not a coincidence. That's a gift from the land. Next episode, we stay in Colombia, but the story changes completely. We'll get into the varieties growing on these farms, why the climate that gives Colombia 2 harvests also shaped how they process their coffee, and how one organization turned a nation of small farmers into a global brand almost overnight. Like and subscribe to stay on course. I'm Jared, your Navigator. I'll see you next time. Seen the rain in Colombia, Colombian rain, different than Colombian snow. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.